Felder taking on Dan Hooker, main event Auckland. Surprised me. Let me tell you what. Love the fight. Hold that thought. I'll tell you why it surprised me. I thought that whole card was booked around Adesanya. And I'll tell you why I heard that. When I was in Australia for Whittaker versus Adesanya, there was dialogue going on amongst folks in the UFC that said, well, let's see how tonight goes. If Whittaker wins, here's where we're going in February. If Adesanya wins, we're going to Auckland in February. I just draw the conclusion on my own. That meant if Adesanya is the champion, they will go to Auckland, so Adesanya could headline. Then there was all this dialogue about, getting Adesanya's next fight done, right? I realized he kind of built it that night against Paulo Costa, but boom, they made that really quickly, which would also explain the quick turnaround. My February's almost here. I know that sounds like next year to you guys, which it is. What? We're almost to next year. So then when that fell through, Yoel Romero gets inserted, and I mean in a hurry. Snap your finger, boom, Yoel all of a sudden gets inserted. That dialogue starts building up. And then both sides go quiet. Yoel goes quiet, Adesanya goes quiet. Anytime two sides go quiet, that means the fight's done. But the announcement isn't ready to be made. So, okay, this is all lining up. I got this thing all figured out. I got the inside track. I overheard somebody who overheard somebody when I was in Australia through somebody that worked at the UFC. I mean, I thought I had this whole thing wired. Turns out, Adesanya's out, Hooker's in. But the reason that's interesting, we all believe that Hooker would be on the card. Hooker's last fight, he calls out Dustin Poirier. Awesome fight. I just didn't know where Dustin's head was at. Don't forget, Dustin was just the champion of the world. He just had a mega fight in an arena that was built for his fight. I mean, not for nothing, but Dustin does get a moment to recompose himself, look at the landscape, and decide what direction he wants to go. Okay, my guess that Dustin would do just that happened. Move him aside. I'm giving you my own timeline here. This is the Chael timeline for Chael getting exposed to this fight. But I worked with Felder at the MSG card, the BMF title, Diaz versus Masvidal. And I asked him, I said, Paul, how come your next fight hasn't been announced yet? You working on something? And he said, no, I'm not. I said, Paul, you holding out on me? Well, I feel like you would know. Come on. You think old Chael's going to blab? I will, but if you tell me not to, I won't. He goes, Chael, I swear, I really don't know. He said, in fact, the only name I've heard even discussed is Dan Hooker. And as soon as Paul told me, I remember right where I went, whoa, Paul, take that fight. That's a great fight. I didn't say anything. I just said, oh, okay. But inside, I would love to see that fight. Paul Felder gets so much credit, if you were just used one word, for being tough. Okay, great. He has earned that moniker. Dan Hooker gets so much credit for being tough. I mean, that is a tough guy contest to the highest of levels, particularly when you find out it's a main event, because now you're talking about 5 rounds or a potential for 5 rounds. I mean, it changes the fight. That's a main event. Boom, I get it. You don't need a supporting cast on that. Hooker and Felder, they're gonna do great. But I love the matchup, particularly when you do look at the kickboxing abilities, and there is the common opponent, which is Barboza. But Barboza is very much a different striker than both Hooker and both Felder, only in that speed. Barboza's speed is really what I thought gave Hooker problems. I got Hooker when it comes to toughness and heart and grit and determination, and not for nothing, even understanding the sport and playing his hand right. Hooker gets it. Adesanya gets it. Whoever their coach is, if those guys hang out or whoever's advising them, they keep getting advice from that guy, fellas, because you're doing everything perfect. But I don't know that you could say anybody's tougher than Dan Hooker. You might be able to find somebody as tough. Sounds like you just did in Paul Felder. But you have to eliminate that before you can even get into skills, right? I mean, before you can even get into, if one guy is significantly tougher than the other, if one guy is in significantly better shape than the other, and he's got a pace and he can push, that intangible is going to overpower everything else. It's like putting bacon in a sandwich. You put bacon in a turkey sandwich, you now have a bacon sandwich. It's going to overpower everything. So you got to find somebody tough before you even get into skill sets to go with Hooker. Same thing goes with Felder. It looks like we got a wash. It's going to be a battle of skills. And I think as that starts to get carried out, particularly over the contest that could be 5 rounds, our discussion's going to change on this. The X's and the O's are going to formulate. We're going to start to break this down as time comes, but just in a real quick glimpse, standing back at 10,000 square feet, scene. Main event, done. Adesanya not in. Hooker is in. Felder opposite him. Auckland, October, February. Something to look forward to.